So this lack of education, do you think it's one of the main reasons why governments struggle to collect taxes? Because I need a justification, I don't have a justification. Is this the main reason?
Well, I don't think it's the main reason. Okay, so we have like 200 countries in the world. So it's hard to say what's the main justification for these 200 governments, broadly.
Struggling to collect taxes.
There's many reasons why they struggle. But if I take our part of the world, which is the African continent, where we have a history of colonization, the challenge that we face in countries that have been colonized is that there isn't an understanding yet about the reason why taxes were put in place. And unfortunately, if you look at calls for independence, so for example, in my book on tax and development, when I talked about Kenya's independence, the original call for independence from the freedom fighters was actually redistribution of tax, not independence. So suddenly the conversation takes a slightly different tone. So I think redistribution has been a major pinching point, not to pay or not to pay. Are you spreading it properly? Are you spreading it correctly? And do people feel like you're spreading it in such a way that there is not just fairness in the system, but there's also a perception of it? Because sometimes I think perception destroys the good intentions of governments more than the reality of how they spend. I think that has been one of the biggest impediments. I think we are now coming of age where we have a robust system where many people are literate. We now have intergenerational education. And I think now is the time when you're going to be able to see people taking control of where they are going and what they need from their government. So I think we've just come of age, and then the demands are going to become more. But the refusal to pay is because also governments have not been bringing people onto the tax base. So one example, which I think is in my book on Financing Africa, was at a certain point in time, you would have like a population of 18 million in a country, for example, over the age of 18. And out of those 18 million, if you looked at the registration of numbers of taxpayers, it was as diverse as 99% in South Africa to 3% or 1% in Senegal. So you start to realize that people are not being registered on the tax base. And if you go and look into company registries, you will find that the place to register your company will be in the capital or the city or a city in a country. But you will not find roving desks to register. And getting an ID, getting a tax number, these are things that people struggle to get. And so I think there is an absence of ease in the system in getting registered. Now, if you look at countries in the global north, very, very often you're born with a number, and that's the number you stay with for the rest of your life. So when you turn 18, the tax issue kicks in. When you turn 21 in some countries, now you can take alcohol. But it's still the same number every single time. But if you look at many countries, in developing countries specifically, you might actually have even 8 or 9 different numbers. And nobody's going to remember 8 or 9 different numbers in today's world.